Welcome back to another Coach's Corner where we answer all your triathlon-related questions. In this week's show, how do I deal with tendinitis? Is a faster stroke in open water always better? How long can a mid-ride coffee break be? What is a training camp? And can I just use mountain bike pedals? Let's get to the answers. All right, our first question this week is from Bobby Atkinson. Hi GTN, love your videos. I had a question for you. I had a fairly heavy training block this winter and it seems I didn't leave myself enough recovery days between my harder sessions. And I developed some overuse tendinitis in my hamstrings last week. I have a 70.3 race scheduled in the first weekend of June, worst timing ever. Do you have any thoughts on recovery strategy and returning to racing when dealing with tendinitis? Is it a bad idea to try a race in June only 3 weeks away? Okay, we've probably missed Bobby's race here. As you probably noticed, there is a bit of a delay between you guys answering your questions and us getting around to actually answering them because, well, logistics. There is a lot of stuff going on. So if you're asking a time-sensitive question for our Coach's Corner, maybe just put a note there, hashtag time-sensitive or something, so that we know that this needs to be answered promptly. But we're going to answer these questions anyway. There's a couple in here today which are kind of time-sensitive for the asker. But they're relevant to a big, broad range of people. And so we're going to include them anyway and still answer the question, even if it maybe is a bit too late to help Bobby. Tendinitis, as the name implies, is the inflammation of a tendon. It can happen anywhere, but for triathletes, it's usually the Achilles, the foot, the knee, or the shoulder. Now, we're not going to advise you specifically. When it comes to any kind of diagnosis or pain, you should go to an expert and you should get it diagnosed properly. We can't diagnose it over a YouTube video for obvious reasons. There's a lot of different things that can cause them, and there's a lot of different prognoses and diagnoses of these kind of things. The prognosis for your particular thing kind of depends on the severity, the cause, and also the location. If you catch it early and rest it, it could just be a few days and you could be right back to training as usual. If you don't catch it early and you keep pushing on, which, let's be honest, is what triathletes tend to do, then it can be significantly longer. If you wait until it's really hurting, it can be a long, long time before that tendon has healed. So when you feel a niggle coming on, the best thing to do is slow right down and let it catch up with itself before it turns into something a lot worse. And if you keep going even beyond that and just keep pushing through, it can do long-term damage. So definitely don't do that. When it comes to actual treatment, the immediate treatment, if you find a niggle coming on, is RICE, rest, ice, compression, and elevation, to really make sure that that tendon has enough time to heal and get all the gunk out of there and make sure it's on its way to healing as quickly as possible. After the first 2 or 3 days, you can shift from the ice, which was to reduce the inflammation, to warmth to try and promote blood flow and improve that healing. And hopefully you'll have caught it early enough that it clears up pretty quickly. It is also important that you treat the cause and not just the symptoms. Tendinitis is generally caused by something. Maybe you can identify that cause in its overtraining or one particularly hard session or long session that you overdid a little bit. It could be that there's a tightness in either the muscle that attaches to the tendon or even the antagonist muscles on the other side of your leg or your body from that muscle. So make sure you find the cause, otherwise as soon as you start going again, it's just going to come back. If it is something that's fairly serious, I suggest you head to a physio or a doctor and make sure you've got the diagnosis completely correct before you head off to try and self-treat it. I hope that helps you, Bobby, even if it's a bit late for that particular race. And then Owen Ingerfield asks, what if increasing stroke rate elevates heart rate and decreases form? I found slowing down stroke rate in the pool has really helped. I'd hate to undo all of that. I get a quicker stroke rate in choppier conditions, but what if it's nice and calm? Now, the video Owen is commenting on was a video about open water swimming and how to swim in choppier conditions, and we advocated a faster stroke rate. And Owen's concern is obviously that a faster stroke rate means a higher heart rate and getting more tired quickly and decrease your form. Now, there's a trade-off, of course. A faster stroke rate is only faster in choppier conditions where you're overcoming chop, and a slow stroke rate is actually going to be slower, but that you are going to get a higher stroke rate, a higher heart rate for a higher stroke rate. That's just unavoidable. If it's choppier conditions, we do still advocate that you do a faster stroke rate. It will be a slightly higher heart rate, but you will have to compensate for that chop, and you will actually be faster with a slightly higher heart rate and higher stroke rate. If it's completely calm and flat conditions, it's not choppy and not windy, then you can use your pool stroke. There's no real benefit to changing your stroke for open water. Obviously, the only caveat to that is you have to sight in the open water, even if it's perfectly smooth. But if it's perfectly smooth, it's much easier to sight without actually breaking your stroke, and you'll be able to finally do that quite efficiently whilst keeping that long, relaxed, and efficient stroke that you've worked so hard on in the pool. So I hope that answers your question. You don't have to change your stroke unless you are in the open water and it's choppy. And one other thing, in the open water, when you're swimming with other people, a faster stroke rate is more forgiving of bumping into other people and getting your stroke in any way inhibited by bumping into someone or someone bumping into you, and therefore a faster stroke rate is more forgiving of that. So maybe consider, if there are lots of people around you, even if it is smooth, increasing that stroke rate for a little while until you find some clean open water away from all the people. Okay, Cheryl Oliver asks, you guys joke about having a coffee break on your long training rides. If you're doing a multi-hour training ride, how long can a break be without diminishing the training effect? So during a 4 or 5 hour ride, can you stop for a coffee break or a snack stop and not hurt your training? Yes, you can, generally. This does kind of depend on the goal of the session. Now, often your long training ride is just that, a long training ride. It's an aerobic training ride, it's low intensity, and you're just out there for the aerobic gains that you get from being out there for many hours. In which case, stopping is not going to change the effect too much at all. You're going to get that aerobic burn, you're going to get that long time of a slightly elevated heart rate that's going to make you more aerobically efficient and aerobically fit. If your session is more of a strength and endurance focused session, you can still stop, but you want to keep those stops slightly shorter. You don't want the muscles to relax and feel and lose that tension, so that you're not training the endurance so much. If you sit down for long enough that they can completely relax, then essentially you're doing interval sessions instead of a long strength endurance session. So then you want to keep your breaks as short as possible. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you are doing a race-specific race position training where you are trying to stay in your race position for as long as the race is, say an Ironman, then any stop that you do is going to affect the effectiveness of that session. Obviously, in a race, you can't stop and have a coffee and have a muffin and have a stretch of your back. Well, you can, but it's going to severely affect your race time. So you don't want to. If you're training to stay in that position for the duration of your event, then you don't want to stop for as much as possible. I would say a general rule of thumb across the board is to stop as little as possible, but not so much so that it affects your quality at the back end of the ride. So if you are going to stop for half an hour and then you are going to just be starting again and restarting, that's not very practical. So keep it as short as possible, but don't make it non-existent so that the last hour of your ride, you haven't had your bottles filled, you haven't had anything to eat or drink, you haven't been able to go to the bathroom. That's not worth it either. That's also not efficient. So yes, you can have coffee stops. Keep them as short as possible, I think, is the basic principle. Okay, Nathan Melanson asks, GTN Coach's Corner, it seems like every pro is at one training camp or another. What are training camps? Do they have specific training programs for the athletes, or is it a place that has conditions like hills or climate to help them train for a race, or is it just a code word that they are on vacation/holiday? Well, all of the above. Generally, a training camp is different for different people. For some people, it is a period of training where they are completely focused on eat, sleep, train, and recover. That's it, nothing else. They remove all the other kind of distractions of life, and they can just focus on getting as fit as possible, getting as many hours of training as possible, balanced with as many hours of rest as possible. Now, you can do this anywhere. You can do this at home if you like. Just clear your calendar of everything else and just do a training camp. But it's a lot easier to do when you're away from all those distractions and anything affecting your training. It's also a lot easier to do if you go somewhere sunny with nice roads and nice swimming pool and nice weather. So that is why training camps tend to happen somewhere that's sunny and pleasant, because it's that much easier to get the training done if you've got great facilities and great weather than it is at home if you just call it a training camp. For most pros, it really is a training camp. They are going somewhere either meeting teammates or coaches, and they are focusing specifically on their training for that block. Sometimes it's to get out of a winter, to go to somewhere a bit more sunny. Sometimes it's just to go to race-specific conditions, and they are testing the exact conditions of that race, like a heat camp for a hot event. But it really depends on what they are looking for. For most pros, it's actually a training camp. I used to kind of go on training camp for about 6 months of the year when I left South Africa, but that was more of a seasonal migration than a training camp. But I was essentially on training camp for the next 6 months once I left South Africa. For age groupers who take it very seriously, their training camps are also training camps. They fit a lot of extra miles, a lot of extra focus, and in between that, they get a lot of extra sleep. But for others, you're right. It is just an active holiday. It's going somewhere really nice and sunny and then doing something active while they're there. I guess, as I said at the beginning, a training camp is whatever you want it to be. If you just want to be an active holiday, go right ahead. No one's judging you. It's better than just lying on the beach and doing nothing. And then Trevor Fung asks, GTN Coach's Corner, hi guys, I'm training for my first Ironman 70.3 in Durban, South Africa next month. Oh, that's just happened, so another one that we're a bit late for. Sorry, Trevor. Still, his question is relevant. So, I'd like to know if there's a difference between using road or mountain bike clipless pedals shoes. I started mountain biking several years ago, and when I bought my first road bike, I just fitted mountain bike pedals to avoid having to buy a second pair of shoes. Now I'm wondering if I should consider getting road shoes, as I feel the stiffer sole might transfer power better. Otherwise, why else would there be two different pedal systems? Thanks for amazing show and sound advice. Okay, like I said, a bit late for Trevor, but mountain bike shoes will work just fine for most applications, for most races. They do have the benefit of dual-sided entry, although the Wahoo Speedplay pedals also have that on the road, but they do have the benefit of much easier entry. They also are a lot more tolerant of dust and dirt and walking around in them if you're on mountain bike shoes. You don't have to be so careful. You don't have to take them straight off as soon as you get off the bike so you don't destroy the cleat underneath. So they are more practical, and if you're happy with them, there's no need to change. You will get slightly better power transfer with a road pedal system. It has a more stable platform, a slightly wider platform, and it is better power transfer because of that. But it is marginal gains we're talking about here. You will notice the difference. I certainly, if I swap to mountain bike pedals from road pedals, can feel that difference in power transfer. But not everyone's going to notice that difference as much as I might, and it's not necessarily worth it if it's going to make you less comfortable in all your training rides and less comfortable in all your other events. You're absolutely okay on a decent set of mountain bike pedals. But if you do want to upgrade it, then yeah, I would consider it, and you can upgrade to triathlon shoes at the same time, and yeah, it will be slightly better power transfer. So if you are looking for that last few watts to squeeze the best out of your bike performance, then proper road pedals and shoes is probably the next upgrade for you. I hope that answers your questions. Thank you for sending them in. Remember, below this video or any of our videos, use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner and we could be answering your question. But just don't ask anything that is needs to be answered in the next 10 days because we might not get to it before next week's show. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.